Close. All information is from website for the New York State Public High School Sports Athletic Association. Maggie Gilroy staff video. John Moriello, who has been an ardent follower and commentator on New York high school sports for decades, is writing a weekly column called Best in Upstate, which is designed to fly above all of the state sectional borders. You can reach John at nysswa@gmail.com or at NISWA on Twitter. He oversees the NYSSWA webpage of high school rankings. If you like hot dogs, I respect laws. It's better if you don't watch how either is made. That variation of an expression widely credited to poet John Godfrey Saxe has been kicking around for nearly a century and a half now. Whether the hot dog is of the Sullens, a Buffalo favorite, Sweigel's Rochester, or Hoffman Syracuse variety, though, I trust the process and have waived my right to know the details. As for laws, well, that's a different story. The remote possibility of gastrointestinal distress pales in comparison to the potential pain inflicted by legislation. I like to think of myself as one who keeps up with current events, but too often I find myself learning about what's going on in the state legislature only after a bill has been passed under the cover of darkness. If you think I'm exaggerating, do a search on Google for Albany's The Big Ugly. There is no need to view all governing bodies with such cynicism. Some, like the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, perform its tasks without merely paying lip service to the concept of transparency. I don't always agree with their decisions, but there is at least a consistent process that's followed, an avenue for appeal, and plenty of notice when something is coming down the pipeline. That much was on display Thursday as one of the thorniest issues facing the state's governing bodies was put to rest after 15 months of work at the state level. Meeting in its annual fall session, the NYSPHSAA Executive Committee voted 184. Only the reps from Sections 3 and 4 opposed to create an oversight committee, which beginning next fall will review sectional decisions on the tournament classification of non-public and charter schools. The committee will be able to kick a decision back to the section for further review but not overrule the decision. The goal is to develop greater consistency across the state when it comes to moving those schools, which comprise about 10% of the NYSPHSAA membership, up or down based upon criteria such as recent success and the ability of returning players. For instance, Section 4's classification committee met in the summer and voted to move the Seton Catholic girls basketball team from Class B to A for the 201,718 season. Among the factors weighed were the team's back-to-back sectional championships, decisive wins every step of the way en route to a Federation Championship last March, and a projected roster with numerous key returning players. Last week, Section 5's classification committee met and moved University Prep's boys basketball team for the third time in 13 months. With its two best players having transferred out, UPrep asked to be dropped from Class AA to B. The classification committee instead placed the charter school in Class A1 with the provision that they could be moved back to Class AA if either of the key players returned during the season. If the oversight committee had already been in place, the Seton Catholic decision would almost certainly have been rubber-stamped. On the other hand, it's conceivable they would not have looked favorably upon the idea of moving UPrep. As late as mid-January, the Oversight Committee, which will meet in advance of each of the sports seasons, will be chaired by NYSPHSAA Executive Director Robert Zayas. At the outset, NYSPHSAA President James Osborne will appoint a representative from each of the 5 enrollment classifications along with a 6th member from a non-public or charter school. Thursday's vote to approve was the culmination of a process that had its origins in November 2015 when superintendents of suburban school districts in Monroe County wrote to Section 5 and the NYSPHSAA seeking to remove non-public schools from postseason competition. Section 5 began a study of how non-public and charter schools might be split off but was unable to develop a proposal. If it looked curious to a casual observer that the matter went to a vote without any discussion Thursday, it shouldn't have. There was nothing left to be said. We've had it as a discussion item numerous times, Zayas said. I don't like an item being presented to the executive committee without the chance to consider it. It's worked well for us for at least the past 2 years. The NYSPHSAA took up the issue beginning in July 2016 with a two-pronged approach. The first committee, made up of representatives from across the state, studied the feasibility of adding 1 or 2 new sections overlaid upon the existing 11 sections, a development that attracted quite a bit of attention. The new sections would have consisted exclusively of the NYSPHSAA's non-public and charter members. After meeting multiple times, however, they determined that financial, logistical and legal concerns made it unlikely that any plan could get approval from across the state. The executive committee voted this spring to shut down the study. While that was happening, the group studying the idea of the oversight committee plowed ahead. Their proposal was all but complete by the time the executive committee met in May, and it was brought back to the section councils, their executive directors and then the larger NYSPHSAA Central Committee over the summer for final rounds of discussion. In the end, every league and every section as well as the people they elect to represent them at the state level had a voice in the process. It's the way it should be, Zayas said after the meeting adjourned. What we do is driven by the membership, which is the right way.